Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talk with Omri Zin-Tamir, a baker and the owner of the bakery on 22nd Street. We talk about what it's like becoming a baker after starting his career as an artist, starting a bakery in his basement, and the difference between being patient and being lazy on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Omri Zin-Tamir, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me to be here. And
I was going to say thank you for joining me, but really I'm joining you because we are in the basement. You're of your home, which is also the bakery at 22nd Street.
That's correct.
What is the bakery at 22nd Street, and how did it start?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint the exact birthplace, actually, because this has been an idea that's been rolling around in my mind, I think, since 2014.
Okay.
When I first saw another bakery in another basement at someone else's house somewhere in upstate New York, where I really saw that something like that was even possible to do.
Okay.
And at that time, I was baking still as a hobby, but not. I don't think I was even baking with sourdough. I think I was just, regularly just baking at home for the fun of it. And then I guess it started developing. This hobby started developing a little more, and I got into sourdough baking and got more serious about it and started, diving deeper into it. And this idea of opening up a bakery started, emerging into my thoughts. I don't know exactly, because this was all, during this time we moved so many places.
Okay.
And I had an amazing opportunity to actually apprentice with somebody, with a baker, with Richard Bourdon in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I actually got to experience a real working bakery, and that was, for me, maybe the pivotal moment where I said, okay, I want to do this.
So it didn't dissuade you?
No, on the contrary,
okay.
Actually. And that was just, it was actually kind of magical that even happened. I mean, it was a very, very strange series of coincidences that led me there.
Okay.
And through a friend, because I was an artist, still am a sculptor, I guess, in some ways. Kind of tapering off that maybe a little bit, I don't know. I'm not really sure. But at the time I was practicing art more seriously, and I was doing this residency in upstate New York, where I first actually met this guy who showed me his basement bakery there.
Okay. At
the same time, I also met a very good friend who was the director there at the residency, Monica Bourgeois. I hope I'm saying her name right. Her last name, something Polish. She'll forgive me. To make a really long story a little bit shorter, she was the director there the previous year, but that time when I came to that residency, she got fired and she went through a very bad time in her life. And got separated, got divorced, and was a really, really down time in her life. Fast forward to 2017, and my wife and I are having dinner at Tartine Bakery in San Francisco for my wife's birthday. And my wife posts that on Facebook.
Right.
And Monica responds and writes, "How lucky you guys are. My new boyfriend taught Chad Robertson, who is the Tartine baker, everything he knows." And at the time I was kind of, reading and, a lot of stuff about baking, and I happened to know that Richard Bourdon was Chad Robertson's mentor.
Ah.
And from there, one thing led to another, and I got an invitation to apprentice there for a couple of weeks, and it was pretty amazing.
So you've been a lot of places around. I mean, first of all, you're Israeli.
That's true.
You've traveled around a lot. You have been a lot of places. You've seen a lot of places. What was the journey to art and then to baking? And where did that come from? Where did that start from? Was it always to be an artist? Was that always the plan, or?
That was the plan.
Okay.
That was the plan since I can remember myself. I'm not sure. I think I was always told that I was good at it, so I sort of believed it and I just went along with it, in a way.
Okay.
It's just how it works. When you're young, you like getting good feedback for stuff. So,
sure.
So I kept doing it, and I went to art school, and then I went to art college in Israel. I went to Bezalel and studied, fine arts over there. I did my MFA, and then we actually, my wife first, we came here because she got into the MFA program in Richmond, in Virginia Commonwealth University.
Oh, okay, sure.
And she's an artist and still practicing. She teaches at University of Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
In the sculpture department, actually.
Got it.
She's a professor there. And so she got into the program in Richmond, and then I got into the program in Richmond a year after that as well. And we got our MFAs there in Virginia. And from there, we sort of started, rolling from one university job to another, like visiting positions as they do, looking for it. Because we really wanted to stay in the States.
Sure.
And so we, I was teaching a little bit, and throughout this time teaching, and we went to Florida. We spent 3 years in Florida, and then we moved back up to Virginia, to Lexington, Virginia, and then here to Minnesota. And then this whole time, throughout these travels, the transition from art to baking became sort of it sort of happened organically. I was, my wife was teaching more. I was more at home. I had more time in my hands. At the time that I actually went into sourdough baking, was I was on a visa that didn't really allow me to work, and so I couldn't actually do anything for work. So I had more time. I was baking more. I know for a while I considered it an art project, I guess, but then at some point it just became what it was.
Which is interesting because baking is. You say you consider it an art project. I think that's funny because I've always considered sort of cooking is the art, but baking is the science.
I don't.
Unless you want to tell me I'm wrong, which you can't.
I can't tell you you're wrong because I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine.
Let's just say I've studied art too many years to really understand what people mean when they say this is art. I have no idea. I've been they confused the heck out of me throughout these, and I think that was the initial goal, in fact. But so I don't know. But what I can say is that for me, baking has been more of, the way I understand it, it's been more of a craft, which is something that, it's the sort of transition I actually wanted to do from something that was a lot, art to something that is, it's very chaotic. It's completely, there's a degree of freedom there that is almost difficult to tolerate in a way for me. I found myself getting lost a lot of times in it. And I really wanted to do something that I knew. I came into my workshop in the morning and I knew what I had to do that day, instead of like making everything up, every day as I go all the time. So, and that, I think that was part of my thinking that kind of helped me, understand that this is a transition I want to make.
This is the problem with an audio medium. And I had this with the episode that you heard last week, where we interviewed the Planty Queens at their store in Northeast Minneapolis, is like, I can see so much that you, the listener, can't see. So describe, Omri, we're in your basement. I've said that already, but like, describe what's around us, because this is just sort of a fascinating glimpse that I get inside, and I don't really understand what most of it means.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, I guess start behind you, because so there's 3 large chalkboards with all sorts of there's numbers. They might be temperatures. They might be times. What are we looking at here?
My frustrations mostly, and attempt at correcting those, and mostly just an understanding that a chalkboard is much more efficient than a computer or a notebook, or because those just I when your hands are full of flour or dough and trying to open your computer and trying to get to a formula, ends up ruining your computer ultimately. Yeah. So a chalkboard is much cheaper.
Yes.
But these are basically my the charts and formulas and mixes and just my what we got this is the batch. The quantities that I use for like of the batch that I make for farmers markets, and then I have a chart that I can keep track of the folds when I fold the dough and it's proofing,
Okay.
And so there's a bunch of different, and also I keep track of orders of my subscription program here, and it's easy, it's wipeable, it's it's just a system that I developed that's easy for me to to have the important information that I need just right in front of me when I need it.
Okay. And so now to your right, you would show me you have built yourself a small walk-in cooler out of wood and like duct tape.
So this is it's not held together with the duct tape.
No. But the duct tape, no.
Not to confuse your viewers.
No. You're right. The duct tape is there to seal in the seams. It's, I'm sure, screwed together.
It's actually a. So this is very interesting, and this is maybe some free advertising here for something that I actually think is pretty revolutionary. It's called a CoolBot technology, and it's this company. They developed this little apparatus that you connect to an AC, and you can actually build your own cooler, walk-in cooler, and the amount of money that saves is incredible.
Yeah.
It's pretty. We're talking about this size cooler. If I were to order it, from a company that does
like a restaurant style walk-in.
It could go up to like a couple of like tens of thousands of dollars. And this is put together for just over maybe 1,400.
Yeah.
So it's essentially a very very useful tool. And it can go down to, right now I have it on 50. It can go down to almost freezing. I can use it as a freezer as well, although I don't.
Yeah.
I don't need those kind of temperatures. This was a very good, this was a very important, I think it's the most recent addition to the bakery, and it changed my entire way of baking and my my capacity,
Sure.
Everything just made this is what enables me to actually do the big batches for the farmers market that
Okay.
that I can do now, and instead of coming with like 20 loaves and being, I can actually come with a decent batch.
So which farmers markets are you at, and how often are you there?
Right now I'm only at Mill City
Okay.
Farmers Market, and I'm there. I want to say about 3 times a month, but it fluctuates. So sometimes it's 2 times a month, sometimes it's 3 times a month. It's not very consistent. You have to follow the schedule on the market website to really see. I have to follow it myself. Sometimes I don't really.
Is this your first year there?
It's my first year there. I mean, this is my first year doing this, or this is my second year now, my second summer
Right.
doing this all together. I started this last spring.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm just getting started. Yeah, the farmers market is a great experience. It's one I kind of wish I would sign up for more weeks right now, because it's been really great.
That's awesome.
And I get to meet a lot of my problem with the subscriptions. I don't get to meet my customers so much. They pick up from my porch, but I don't see them.
Oh.
And I know them by name, and sometimes
Sure.
they contact me, and sometimes we even exchange a few emails, but I never see them. And in the farmers market, you actually get to see the people, and I think that's a big part of the experience. My son, who is 6, he helps me out over there. He's my cash register guy, and it's an educational experience for him, and he won't miss it for the world.
That's
like,
awesome.
He
That's
needs
so
to get
great.
up at 5 in the morning, and he gets up like a spring. So he's recently a little less springy. I have to admit, he was more at first, but he's still excited.
You're a bunch of weeks into it at this point.
Yeah.
And now it's
It's like, oh, okay, market
I have
again.
to get a.
Yeah, there's that a little bit in like the first 10 minutes of the morning, but yeah, he's more excited about it. So
So the subscriber setup you have, is that something that you've seen other people do with this type of product or other sort of types of small batch? Okay,
absolutely. I definitely didn't invent the wheel on that one.
Right.
It's a format that has its pros and cons. It's a way of getting your product out there, and also getting a steady revenue.
Mm-hmm.
The subscribers have I think it works both ways. You get a steady supply of bread without having to think about it. It's almost like a CSA,
Sure.
that you're signed up for.
Yeah.
And for me, it's great because it keeps the bakery running. It keeps us a steady steady cash flow, and I can. The cooler here was built off subscription.
That's great.
That's all. Once I had enough to do some upgrades, so I put it into like upgrading the bakery.
Yeah.
And it's that's been working out really well. I hope people are happy with it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't get to meet my customers too often. I'm getting good feedback, but it's
Yeah. I mean, they keep showing up at the farmers market. I guess they can't be too unhappy.
Yeah, and they keep showing up in the farmers market, and they don't, and so far, I mean, I've had people cancel subscriptions, but never for reasons of, we don't like your bread or anything like that.
Right.
Well,
that's good.
So I think I've got mostly positive feedback so far.
Good. You mentioned sort of the time where you decided where you got more into sourdoughs, and that sort of became the business. What was the process for you to get sort of create a starter and learning how to do the sourdough sort of the way you wanted to do bread?
I just read about it, and I started. I did my first couple of starters. I ended up throwing away, not because I don't know even if they worked or not.
Okay.
At the beginning, you don't know what it's supposed to look like, and you don't know what it's supposed to smell like, and and the smells are actually what mostly get a lot of people get them off track because you don't know if it smells sour, but is that a good sour? Is it a bad sour?
Right.
If you're
it's
not
sort of the
at the beginning,
fermenty smell. You don't really know. what it's supposed to be.
And fermented flour is, it's different from any other ferment because, it has a very specific smell to it. It's, and it ferments fast as well. So you don't, if you're inexperienced, you don't know if you went, too far, if you let it sit out too long, if it needs to, it takes a while before you understand how really forgiving that is, and how most starters, even if they get moldy, actually, you can actually revive them. And it's, it's a very, it's a very strong, concoction. It's as far it's very resilient. Is the word I'm looking for. And by my third attempt, I was a little bit more courageous, I think. And I started. Okay, I'm gonna just keep feeding this and see what happens. Even though this might be. I don't know if this is smelling right. I don't know. But we lived in this small town in Virginia at the time, and I was just learning this thing, and it's contagious. Like I had friends of mine all of a sudden. Oh, you're starting a sourdough starter. Oh, we want one too. Can you guide us? I just started this yesterday. I don't know. But
I'm not sure they really wanted you guiding them. You didn't know what you were doing.
They were asking me questions, and they were calling me. Look, my starter is looking like a little bit like there's these bubbles that I'm not sure is supposed to be there. It's it's grown a bit, but it's sort of it's. I don't know. Do you want to come over to see? I'm like, sure. But we were working it out together. So there was a bunch of us at some point just, kind of throwing, just a kind of, bouncing, I guess, impressions off of each other, and trying to figure it out as we went along together. And for some reason, because I was the first one, I guess I got, I got more credit for things, but... Not really, it was just a hit or miss thing, and it grew from there. All of a sudden you get your first loaf out of the oven, you say, "Oh, this actually works." And what really got me ultimately was the flavor, because it's like you never tasted bread before once you've had sourdough bread.
I love a good sourdough, and I love baking, and sourdough. I haven't quite taken the plunge to starting, my own starter yet.
Yeah, it's a plunge.
It's
a plunge.
Freaks me out a little bit, the idea.
I understand why. It takes 5-10 minutes of your time every day, a couple of times a day, depends, what stage you're at, but you have to be there that time, which is, I think, why, in some ways, I don't know if that's true, but in some ways that kind of was part of how it evolved into... For me, how it evolved into a full-time thing, because you realize, you're actually, there's this, almost like this metronome in your life, this thing keeping a rhythm that you have to be, this time you have to be at home. Like there's certain things I couldn't do. I was free the whole day, but there was 5 minutes of the day where I had to be at home to do that thing. And then, but it's, it's like taking a pet. It's one of those things you realize you need to care for it.
The other 23 hours and 55 minutes, not a problem, but those 5.
Yeah. I mean, that twice a day depends on your feeding schedule, but for me it was usually morning and evening, so that I could have at least the big stretch of the day open. But it's it's definitely a commitment either way.
I would have to think the starter is probably fairly significant in size. It doesn't simply because the quantities you're using. You have to keep a pretty.
Can I get up and?
Yeah. Or you're gonna.
This is my starter.
Okay, that is a very small. That is like. I don't know, maybe a fingertip.
It's 150 grams.
This is 100.
Just under 190, I think, just under 200 grams.
So it is a small Tupperware container with 190 grams of starter in it.
That's how it starts. That's what I keep as what you might call a mother. like so.
The mother dough.
The mother starter, like,
Okay.
or I don't know. There's different names for it.
Yeah.
Depends where you're from, but that's only. That's very new. That's been fed like about an hour ago.
Okay. What'll it grow to by the time you feed it again?
About 2.5 times in size, maybe. So it also depends because this is the first feeding after a few days that it's been in the fridge. So
Reviving it a bit.
So this the first feeding, and also I'm fermenting this in room temperature, so it will go slower.
Okay.
If I wanted to really, get really big, so I'll put it in the proofer at about 80 degrees, and and then, but I'll have to feed it a lot more.
Okay.
Before like big batches, I feed it more. I keep it warmer and I feed it regularly, like every couple of hours.
And then that'll make it grow faster.
That'll make it grow faster and be a lot more active.
Okay.
So right now it's like a maintenance feed, just to get it, just to give it a little bit of love. But it's that's all you need, really.
Amazing.
And after, once you start the process of baking, you build a what you call a levain.
Mm-hmm.
So you take even small, not even all of this.
Yeah.
And then you mix it into you start building the dough. So
Okay.
you start. It's a process of feeding this into a certain ratio of starter to flour and water, and then you take that and you build that into a bigger dough, and that into a bigger dough, and then and then you end up with however you need, and then that inoculates ultimately the final amount of dough that you're making.
Okay.
So it's it's a
Process.
it's a process. It is. It's a couple of days.
You have to have a lot of patience to bake in this way.
Patience? I don't know. I like to think myself as lazy.
Okay. That's one spin you could put on it.
I mean, it's not the very, it requires a commitment and to be like, to be really, you got to be, focused on the time.
Yeah.
All the time, which is, I guess that's the hard part.
We are sampling now, so if you hear us chewing or like groaning in enjoyment from this bread, this is incredible. What are we eating?
The sound of chewing is,
Uh-huh.
all right.
This is very authentic.
We are actually sampling from the product of the bakery, so there's something to be said about authenticity. I believe this is the what I call the house loaf. It's a blend of I think about 5 or 6 different grains of flour. It's that's made mostly with heritage wheat that I use, that I get from suppliers here, Sunrise Flour Mill, that they supply this incredible heritage flour. It has great flavor and great baking performance, and this is my sort of the main flour that I use, but I add on to that a few other grains that I developed this formula over time that mostly for flavor, texture, tweaked it, and it's just this has now become like my signature bread, I guess you could say. It's the main loaf that I sell.
Okay.
It's it's let's see, I think it's fermented for about 17 hours, I believe, maybe a little more.
Okay.
Sometimes, but it's
Really good. It is really good. So how many different types of breads do you make? You said this is sort of the house The house
Yeah.
loaf. Do you make any other? Are there other? What are some of the other products?
I make right now. I make I think 3 other loaves. Plus, I also make a rye crisp bread that I do, which is like a lavash or a cracker,
Sure.
you know. And the other breads that I make one sort of like a ciabatta. It's called a pane francese. It's like an Italian French bread.
Oh.
It's a funny story behind it because I think it was the Italian baker who got really upset that the Italians were ordering a lot of baguettes from from France, and he wanted to make it I think he made the ciabatta, and then he said, "Oh, yeah, you want the baguette? All right." He took the ciabatta and just stretched it out and made it into a long jar. Here you go. That's a baguette. And so they just go, "Here's a French bread for you." So I think I don't know. I like that story. I read it somewhere. It might be true. Maybe not. Who knows?
I would just assume it is. Go with that.
I assume
It's
it
a good
is
story.
as well. I assume all these stories are real.
Yeah.
Especially if they're funny.
Oh, for sure.
And but if I like. I like the idea of it. I mean, you mentioned before that I've been around quite a lot. Maybe that has something to do with it. I like the idea of sort of world breads. Breads that have some story between cultures and migrations. And the other loaf that I make is a miche. It's a 4-pound sort of round. It's like an ancient French bread. It's the original French bread long before the baguette. It actually became popular again in Paris, somewhere in the middle of the 20th century. Somewhere with a bakery called Poilin. They started making it again, actually. And as bringing back whole wheat, bringing back this real rustic, rural bread that the French peasants used to eat and used to cook it and bake it in these communal ovens, in the villages. It lasts forever. It was a real sort of counteraction, I guess, against the baguette. A baguette lasts for the stick of bread that you would have to buy every day because you eat it. If you have any left over, it's stale by the time by the next morning.
It's great immediately,
right?
And that's almost it,
right? So I remember if it was Lionel Poilin was the baker or his father actually of the original baker that actually made this, made this bread again. And offered it as an alternative to this baguette. So this bread, it's made with whole wheat. It's a lot healthier. It will last a lot longer. The flavors of that bread are really incredible. It's a big flavor bread. It's very tart. It's very earthy and fruity, and it's fabulous. And so I make that, or I try to make that. And actually, a lot of people people are a little. I find people a little cautious about buying it at first, but then they come back for it. It's. I can understand it's a little intimidating.
It's a 4-pound loaf of bread. It's a huge
you can
loaf
buy,
of bread.
Well, you can buy half of it.
Okay,
I still buy the half loaf as well.
So those are. I mean, a 2-pound loaf of bread is a huge. I mean, that's a lot of bread. That's a big.
It's a big bread.
That's a big
but
bread.
it will last a long time too.
Yeah.
If you're a family of 4, it will last for over a week easily.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, easily. And it's.
I don't know. You make bread last that long. I feel like you're not trying hard enough.
It's a big loaf.
All right.
You can try it.
No. I probably should have.
And it's dense. It is dense.
Okay.
Like one slice will go a long way with that bread. So it's not a. It's definitely not a baguette where you kind of in one sitting you just tear it and just dip it and just before you know it, it's gone. It's it also it's a meal. It's another thing that I try to sort of curate my my offerings by the different styles of different breads that so this bread can actually not only in terms of the density and the texture of it, also the flavors. It's an actual meal. It's not something that goes next to a meal,
Right.
like a baguette. A
Right.
baguette is something that's you eat it with your dinner. This could actually be the dinner. You eat it with a mild piece of like buttery salmon or something, or a ricotta, or a mild creamy cheese
Right.
on top of it. The bread itself is so flavorful that you don't really need to load it with anything like too dramatic.
The bread is the star.
Well, sort of, yeah, in this case.
Yeah. Yes. With this particular loaf.
Yeah.
Like that's.
So it's yeah. I'm. What my first one of my thoughts when starting this, I and thinking about like how. Or like how many breads am I going to make and what type of breads I'm going to make. I really didn't want to like make the same breads that are available, that are already out there, that are already available. The same kind of model of like this French bakery that you make, baguettes, croissants, and I mean there's plenty of that around, and I really want to make loaves that I want to eat, first of all, that I want to have, and that I can't find anywhere else, really, and that that I think are like I said, that they have some kind of story behind them. They have some kind of either cross-cultural thing or some reference to an interesting sort of scene behind how they are consumed.
For sure. Well, the bakery on 22nd Street, get more information at bakery22st.com. Get yourself a subscription, learn more about those, find out the farmer's market schedule, and people will see you out there. But before we let you go, actually really before you let me go, since we are in your home, what is, last couple of questions. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Hanukkah.
Okay. How come?
Donuts. We make donuts at home.
Do you?
Yeah, and it's yeah.
I've heard the Israeli donuts for Hanukkah is far superior to whatever is concocted here in America. Do you have any comment on that as an Israeli living in America? You won't offend me either way.
All right. There used to be in Israel a donut that would cost. It used to cost 1 shekel. Now it probably costs more, but you get them just in every supermarket. Mm-hmm. And that was the donut. It was great. It was a fabulous donut. And then these days they have donuts that I think I heard sell for like over 100 shekels, so like about $25 or just maybe over about $30 a donut.
What?
They make donuts like all these like these restaurants and cafes and these chefs are coming out with like these really extravagant conceptual donuts that they sell for a lot of money, and I guess there must be a market for it. I miss the old days.
You're
personally.
a very simple soup guy.
I like the strawberry jam, strawberry filling. Yeah. If you wanna make it, if you wanna diversify it, I'll take one with Nutella as well. That'll be good.
Okay.
But it's when we were in Israel right now, we just came back from Israel, mm-hmm. and my son, who really likes donuts, he was really looking for a donut. There's no donut in Israel other than during Hanukkah. And the first thing that we did, we came back from the States. We came back to the States, and we landed in MSP in Minneapolis. Yes. airport, and there's a donut shop right as you come off the plane. And that's the first thing we did after like a 12-hour ride. We bought 3 donuts, we sat on our bags, we ate in the middle of the airport, just stuffed our face. And that was our welcome home thing.
And speaking of food, as well, I mean, we've been speaking of food this whole time, but what's your favorite Jewish food?
My favorite Jewish food? I'll probably say something, and then 5 minutes after you're gone, I'll be like, oh, I should have said this sort of thing.
You could go Israeli too, if there's anything from home that you get a real...
I don't know. I'm a chopped liver guy. I like chopped liver.
Really?
I love chopped liver.
Okay.
And I think that if you make it right, I think everybody will like chopped liver.
Excellent.
I think it's one of those things that are extremely Jewish, very Jewish. But they're also I wouldn't, I love a lot of different types of food. I wouldn't necessarily, not that Jewish food is not as, can't be as flavorful, but it doesn't come off intuitively as, this flavorful, colorful thing, it's usually pretty gray or beige or or brownish. But I think, that specific like chopped liver over a loaf of that would go wonderfully with the mish, and one of my grandmother's pickles, the dill pickles on the side. I think that would, I would take that over any taco, I guess. Maybe.
Well, Omri Zin-Tamir, thank you so much for having me in your home and in your bakery, and best of luck with the continued growth and continued success of the bakery on 22nd Street.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.